Welcome back from our second break. A couple of final things that I want to touch on. One was Michael's comment about mental health, which we'll come back to in a second, and may in fact form part of the first point. Frank Lynn from Johns Hopkins University talks in the New Scientist article about hearing loss. Specifically, he says hearing loss is one of the most common and least addressed health issues in older adults. Now, the important part of his quote is this, and it affects everything from their cognition to social connection. So he's talking about how something that's often undiagnosed or misdiagnosed or hidden in some way, which is hearing, is probably one of the more obvious ones, can impact not only our understanding of the world around us at whatever age we are, but also our ability to participate in our local communities. And we've already established at the beginning that our cognition and our ability to communicate and be an active member of our society is what allows us not to be a burden and to be an asset and to live healthily according to ourselves in the future. So is this, as well as hearing being an undiagnosed condition, I would suggest mental health issues are often undiagnosed and can prevent people, A, understanding, and B, connecting. Michael, do you want to pick up on that?
Well, certainly. Well, first of all, on hearing, Tim and I have known each other for many years, and over those years, we've had a lot of conversation about hearing aids, because I've used hearing aids for more than 10 years now, and I know Tim has also. And this is one of the unrecognised benefits of the NHS, is that the quality of hearing aids available through the NHS, outsourced to private companies, is pretty remarkable. But on the wider point about mental health, and what I wanted to talk about really was mental attitude. Mental health issues and how they affect one's physical well-being are really too wide to even think about discussing, I think, in the time we've got available. I came back from visiting a dear friend who lives in Spain, whose whole life has been changed by the fact he's suffering from depression, and it affects his mental health in so many ways. But right, mental attitude. I was being interviewed recently and was asked, how do you stay positive when we're surrounded by all the terrible things that go on in the world? And so we discussed this. And I came back and was discussing the matter. I was discussing the conversation with a friend here, and she said, but the difference is this: you're an optimist. I'm a pessimist. Now, this is one of my good friends here. We have a lot of things in common. We have great discussions. And she said, I've always been a pessimist, and that's the only way to go, in my opinion. And I said, well, I'm with Churchill, who said, I'm an optimist. I don't see the point of any other attitude. And I would really like to talk about, the extent to which having a positive attitude in life can affect one's well-being in older life, because I think it's very important.
Well, I'm going to pick up on that because Tim and I, while we were on the break, and Tim and I had a little chat about our next session. And the next symposium we've decided would be around a more positive discussion. And specifically, we said we would talk about what makes our own lives great. How do we manage to live great lives, on our own terms?
And so picking
up on your point about, whether the glass is half empty or half full, I think is something that we can dive into in more detail then. I do want to come, Tim, I want to come to you, but I want you to talk about this issue that I raised, though, about undiagnosed conditions that people have that impact their ability to connect with their communities, whether they're hearing. Right. And I don't want to labor on hearing. It just happened that Frank Lynn from Johns Hopkins mentioned it, but it could be depression. Depression stops people from going outside, so they can't interact with their communities.
First of all, Michael, the chap you visited in Spain was your barbershop friend that you took me with you to Cadiz, wasn't it?
Same guy.
And
Yes.
I didn't realise, but in those days I was a lot more arrogant and I was less accepting of other people's behaviour. And if I was in the mode I am now, I would have been much more understanding about who he was and so forth. So you can apologise to him on my behalf, because so what I'm saying in the context of mental health is gnosis thauton. Socrates said, know yourself. And life is a journey of knowing yourself. And which is what you said at the top of this chat, the two dates. One is when you're born and the other is when you find out who you are. But I don't think the second one is a date, it's a continuous process.
Agreed.
The other thing about hearing is, I think that is actually vital. And I don't mind people seeing I wear hearing aids because I don't mind them seeing, as most people don't mind them seeing I wear glasses. But glasses like this were first invented in the 18th century and 17 something, pince-nez, and they were invented by the French. How dare they?
How dare they?
Pince-nez being the first one. So my thought on mental health is, and it exists in life. It's not just a function of old age.
Yeah.
And the best way of dealing with any mental health problem is to have a relationship with other people who can contribute and help you through your thoughts. And my view about that is, it exists in society. Pretend you're happy when you're blue. My word, you do look well. I'm getting married in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Hat on the side of your head, all of that sort of stuff. The sun is in the sky, which is great if you can live that way. But we also acknowledge that there are plenty of people for whom that just doesn't work. And, the hat on the side of the head is doing an awful lot of heavy lifting. I want to just sort of wrap this up with, I don't want to lose this thought. The thing about hearing aids, it's great. These tools are available, but the big question is, why don't more people embrace them? And the reason people don't embrace and I'm using hearing aids almost as a metaphor for any support that we may need with any aspect of our health, is because people are in denial that they don't need it. Because I know older people who refuse to use walking sticks, when I know it will help them. I know people who refuse to see the doctor to get their eyes tested for all sorts of reasons. I know people who refuse to get hearing aids because they are convinced that they can hear everything. But as Tim and I were saying during the break, of course they're convinced they can hear everything, because they can hear everything they hear. They don't hear what they don't hear, right? So there's that. And there is a huge sector in our community that don't like hearing aids because they grew up thinking hearing aids were those big bulky things on the back of their ears that vanity, frankly, will prevent.
Michael's got them on already.
Yeah. So there's that. But the flip of all of those things, whether it's a hearing diagnosis, whether it's a mental health diagnosis, yes, attitude is a positive attitude is a help. But, this is backed up in this article again. I go back to the article, and the final quote I'm going to give from this article is from a guy called Luigi Ferrucci, who is not, as Michael knows, not Lou Ferrigno, who Michael has acted with. Lou Ferrigno, Michael has acted with the Incredible Hulk. But Luigi Ferrucci is a different person. He's the scientific director at the US National Institute on Aging. And he says, two people with the same diagnosis have completely different outcomes depending on two things. One is the support they get, and the other is their own resilience. Yeah. So you know, these things are not simple, they're complex, but we ourselves are part of our own solution, it appears to me.
Robert the Bruce.
Yeah.
Robert the Bruce.
Oh, yes.
I don't know why
Robert
Tim
the
was saying
Bruce.
Robert the Bruce, but he's about to tell us why.
Because Robert the Bruce was the guy who watched the spider making the web.
Yeah.
And try again. If you don't succeed, try again.
You're making a very valid point about resilience that I'd forgotten. Right, gents. I think we're going to wrap it up there. It's been an interesting discussion. I think the final thing that we would say to everybody is, you know, we are all of us. I mean, we almost want to say we don't want to talk about aging because we're all on the same continuum from birth to death. You know, we're at different stages of it, and we should embrace life at every stage we're at. We should see illnesses and ailments as obstacles, but you know, we need to learn to live with them, not to see them as factors that impact negatively on our lives to the exclusion of positivity. We're going to talk next time about positivity. We're going to come back and you'll hear from Michael, you'll hear from Tim, and you'll hear a little bit from me about what we think makes our life great. And I shall be as hard as nails coming down on anyone who's got any negativity in that discussion. So tell us what you want us to talk about next. The link will be below, and it's goodbye from Michael.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye from Tim.
It's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me, Paul. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you again. Bye.
Bye.